Good morning, Year 11. I hope you're doing well. In this lesson, on Wednesday, the 6th of January, 2021, we are going to return to English Language Paper 1. Today, we're going to take the story that you read yesterday by Edgar Allan Poe, and using that, you're going to craft an English language paper of your own. By doing that, you'll show that you understand the different elements of the paper and what you need to do with it. Beyond that, we're also looking to focus on the third question about language and structure. And there are some interesting things within the short story you read yesterday that enable you to write about structure in a meaningful way. So let's get right to it. You can see here one of the old Edexcel English Language Paper 1 papers. This is one that we've looked at before. So there's your front page, and as you go down through the paper, you can see that you get your extract, and then we get our 4 questions. Now the first question, as you know, will always be to identify a word or a phrase, which you can see right here. The second question will ask you to pick out 2 elements of a text. This is generally looking at implicit and explicit information, and it will be from a short extract from the overall piece you're given. These 2 questions are meant to just build up your confidence in the paper and should not be too challenging for you. Once we get down to question 3, they start becoming more challenging, and this is the question we're going to focus on a little bit today. Again, you'll be given a bounded part of the overall extract, and you'll always be asked to write about the use of language and structure. Edgar Allan Poe's short story here is a very good example of how we can write about language and structure, especially structure in this part. And then finally, question 4 is going to be a larger question about evaluation. And we were doing some of this before we broke up for Christmas. Now, we're going to begin just briefly with question 3 on language and structure. Reviewing the previous 6 exams, and you should have a handout that I gave you before Christmas that brings these questions together, you can see that question 3 always takes the same approach. How does the writer use language and structure to show the narrator's thoughts and feelings? Or how does the writer use language and structure to build tension? How does the writer use language and structure to describe the moment? Language and structure to show the relationship. Language and structure to show the narrator's thoughts and feelings. Language and structure to show the thoughts and feelings of. So you can see a pattern here, with the key part of the question always being about language and structure. Now we're going to apply that question to the short story you read yesterday, The Telltale Heart. I'm just going to read the opening part of the story with you here. Please follow along. And then we're going to apply question 3 to one part of it. And then I'm going to be turning a piece of work over to you. So let's begin. The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How, then, am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so by degree, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed. And so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber, and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Now, the part we want to focus on, especially for question 3, and for looking a bit more at structure and language, is these opening paragraphs, the bit that I've read. One element of punctuation that should really stand out as we read through this is the use of these dashes. Now, these dashes are also called M dashes or long dashes. What I mean, they are used to build suspense, among other things. As it explains here, when used in a pair, they mark off information or ideas that are not essential to an understanding of the rest of the sentence. It's similar in a way to rounded brackets in that way, although it's a bit different in terms of how it impacts grammar. So, an example here, thousands of children, dash, like the girl in this photograph, dash, have been left homeless. They are also used to show other kinds of breaks in a sentence where a comma, semicolon, or colon would be traditionally used. One thing's for sure, he doesn't want to face the truth. Things have changed a lot in the last year, mainly for the better, or for the worse in the case of coronavirus, where that dash allows for the addition of additional information. Now, if you take this and you return to our story, you'll see that the dashes are doing something quite interesting. As you should know from reading the story yesterday and answering the comprehension questions, this is the story of a murder. Our narrator, our main character, has revealed to us that he murdered an old man and that he dismembered the body, chopping it up into bits, hid them beneath the floorboards, and he gives us this story as an example of how he's sane. Now, clearly, what the man is saying and what he intends for us to understand are at odds with each other. So there's a tension within the text. Now, Poe, as an author, wants us, the reader, to realize things that the narrator doesn't understand himself. And to create that space between the intent of the author and the intent of the protagonist requires a certain amount of skill. In this case, one of the ways that Poe is going to achieve this is through the structure of the text, and specifically through the use of these dashes. So if we begin with this opening sentence, true, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. And in the second sentence, the disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. And then if we look at the second paragraph, and again we pull up the dash, he had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man. Now we can see both uses of the en dash in the bits I've just read to you. You can see that additional information is being added to what the protagonist is saying. And we've also seen the dash taking the place of a comma, semicolon, or whatever, in trying to create a stronger break. More interestingly, however, what we are getting through this use of punctuation is an insight into the state of mind of the character. If we're talking about thoughts and feelings, what we're getting very clearly a sense that this man's thoughts and feelings are not very healthy. The em dashes, by breaking up the sentence structure, is mirroring the broken state of mind of our narrator. Okay, to go true, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been an M, semicolon. But why will you say that I am mad? Well, first of all, if you're going around saying, why do you think I'm crazy? It may indicate that not everything is quite right. But also, it's showing that this man is unable to hold, to sustain a thought clearly without it being disrupted. We see this through a lot of the punctuation, the commas, and the kind of fragmented sentence structure. But we also see it through the dashes, which make it even more explicit. Now, at this point, I'm going to turn this back over to you for some work. We're going to be looking at this in a bit more detail, and we're going to model and practice writing about this kind of punctuation and how it applies to question 3 in our next lesson. And we're also going to apply some of these techniques into our own creative writing, which will be good practice for question 5 and 6, the creative imaginative writing part of the exam. Being able to use punctuation in a sophisticated way will do you very well in the exam and for your grades. But what I'm actually going to ask you to do at this point is to create an exam of your own. You are going to create a question 1, a question 2, a question 3, and a question 4 based on Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. So what I mean by this is that you are going to create a paper much like the one you can see on your screen right now that we looked at before we broke up for Christmas. You're going to create a question 1 that asks the pupil to identify a phrase, but you have to decide what the rest of that question is going to be for 1 mark. You'll do a question 2 where you'll pick out a small part of the overall extract and ask them to pick out 2 things. And again, it's up to you to decide how exactly that's going to work. Then you're going to get on to question 3, which again, you'll pick a part of the overall extract and you'll have a question about language and structure. Now, it might be thoughts and feelings, or it might be something else, as we looked at earlier in this lesson. And then finally, the most challenging one, you're going to come up with a question 4, which is an evaluation question. Okay, you are going to make a statement. There's an attempt to, and what do you think the story is trying to achieve? And then you're going to give it an evaluation. Evaluate how successfully this is achieved. Support your views with detailed references to the text. So for you to be able to create this question well, it really is about trying to decide what this story is trying to achieve. Okay, so that's going to be it for today's lesson. The outcome is for you to create your own examination, questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. The turnaround on this is quite quick. We need it by next lesson so that I can take it in, and then I'll be able to use that to assign to you as a work to do based around this short story. Okay, so that's all of it. Good luck. Please remember, once you're done, to upload your completed work via Teams. That way I'll be able to have a look at it, and then I'll be able to pick the best questions from across the class and assign it back to you as some work that we'll do later this week. I hope everyone is okay and healthy and safe. I know that there's a lot of uncertainty out there. I haven't said anything about what is happening with your mock exams or with your real GCSE exams at this time, because frankly, we don't know. And until we have absolutely certain information, the best we can do is to carry on studying with the parts of your examination that are most likely to happen. As a core subject, it is unlikely that English will be pushed aside, and therefore we want to make sure that we remain focused and we keep studying so that we are best prepared for whatever comes. Good luck, take care, and I'll have another video for you tomorrow, possibly even some live teaching.